This is Deathloop. We're here on PlayStation 5 taking a look at this loop-based game about death, dying, and trying to figure a way to break the cycle. So yeah, this is actually an interesting in concept, but generally alright sort of experience that has a number of issues that I'll be highlighting throughout the video, including a bit of a glitch montage that happens a little bit later on. So anyways, the concept is basically these two assassins are deadlocked, and that means there's this integration of multiplayer, where after you play a bit, you can take on the secondary role and you can go after your main character. So in the game, firstly, we're going to talk about the visuals. We have three options on PS5. We have a performance mode, which is my suggested mode, 4K 60 scaling, so basically it goes up to 4K resolution, keeps 60 FPS. Very good, very smooth. There are times where it does dip though. Secondary, there is this sort of high resolution 4K option, so that's more of a focus on giving you that pure 4K resolution at 60 FPS. So you're going to see that right here. This is that mode. It runs badly. There are tons of performance drops. There are a lot of performance issues. This is more of a future console will run this mode better kind of mode, if that makes sense, which is weird, but yeah, it does not run good, especially during firefights. Just like, again, a snippet here of this one, it's so rough. Like, it is not the way to play this game. And again, the 4K 60 dynamic 4K is the way to go with the performance mode. 100% your best option. But, you know, for just showcase sakes, we are going to present the ray tracing mode. So it is nice that this is an option in the game, but this one drops you to 30 FPS, and it's kind of like, is it worth that? I mean, it's a shooter. In this next-gen time, I'd rather have a 60 FPS option dropping down to 30 FPS. And this is also a look at Juliana, which is your main opponent, and again, kind of the perspective where you get to play as her and go into these worlds and hunt the main character. So that's something we're going to be talking about a little bit later on during some of the invasion segments that are happening within the game. So in this game, in this video, I tried to keep everything as spoiler-free as possible. Oh, here's some of the menu just in regards to equipping different weapons, getting different items. There's this whole system where you are basically collecting things, and it's a little bit different obviously for the main character, but you know, that's kind of just an example of what that menu's like, and we'll touch back on that in a sec as well. Just want to wrap around back at that. So like I was saying, I try to keep everything as spoiler free as possible, but everything is a spoiler and everything is not a spoiler, because you sort of are unraveling this mystery as to what's going on here piece by piece. The concept is more intriguing than the actual way that it is revealed. So this is the most convoluted linear game that pretends to be an open world game that I think I've seen ever, possibly. Like, it is very confusing at the start, and they just pile on information on you. There was so many pop-up screens kind of telling you what was going on, and I was just like, what is happening? There is like, so anyways, it's not confusing though. So once you get going and you play more of the game, you get like a few hours in, or an hour in or something like that, you're kind of like, okay, I know what I'm doing. But it's just at the beginning, oh, here's the glitch montage. Anyways, at the beginning, I was just like, what is going on in this game? They're just throwing stuff at me, and then, you know, it cleans up and makes sense later on, but it's just a little bit overly complex for no reason. They should have trickled things in a little bit better. And then there's these locked glitch screens here that happen. Oh, it just drives me crazy. Again, part of the glitch montage there, but yeah, the game just kind of does a menu thing, and I assume that's because of the multiplayer integration, and then you have to restart the game, so you lose any progress that you did on that mission or on that particular portion of the loop, and you have to go back. And yeah, it's a little kind of weird for them to do that. So anyways, a day is split into different segments of the day. You have a morning, you have a noon, you have an afternoon, and you have a night. So you get to kind of pick one zone per portion of the day, and you get a journal that tells you this happens at this event, or this time of the day this event takes place, then this event takes place at this time of the day, and you kind of pick and choose, and then at the end of the day you can sell all your stuff and kind of choose to infuse your gear or not, and then you have to restart and kind of continue on. you keep your knowledge and whatever stuff you've infused. So, for example, you take out a main target, you get a special perk, you're going to want to infuse that so that you can keep that perk in, future kind of runs. And that's kind of the goal here. It's almost kind of roguelite in that regard. But yeah, you're trying to basically keep some things. Like you get a gun you like. Okay, so you get enough points from, either sacrificing other stuff or your perks or whatnot. And then you can keep that weapon into your next run. And that's just kind of how it goes as you build up a more powerful character. So this is a little bit of the invasion right here. So the gist of the invasion is that you can have it, and you can turn it off to the online feature. And it does seem like this happens more and more as you get later on in the game. It seems like there's more and more segments where this can happen. But the gist of it is you can either choose to play as a regular character or as Juliana, who comes in and starts basically attacking you. And that's kind of the idea, is you're either protecting the loop or trying to destroy the loop. And that's kind of neat. So if you're protecting the loop, you are the antagonist, you're the bad player coming in and trying to shoot the players, trying to stop their progression. And it's kind of neat. It's a neat concept. It's interesting. It doesn't feel like it was really needed, but it's a cool concept. It gets a little bit of multiplayer integration going in there. It's cool, right? Like, I don't know if people are going to spend a lot of time doing it. Well, the first part is basically trying to kill that person or break down this antenna and escape. The options are kind of yours when it comes to that scenario. So going back to the overall experience, I did want to mention that this does have HDR support. And for the ray tracing mode, you get like an ambient occlusion style, and you also get the shadows are kind of what is touched up with that sort of particular style. So you get ray trace shadows. Moving past that, the game itself is alright. It's not super long, but your time may vary based on how effective you are at going in and eliminating your targets and figuring out the story. And it does kind of feel really repetitive later on. Now that's a weird thing to say because, it's expected. It's a game where you are doing a loop, you're playing over and over again, but it's just the areas aren't necessarily effectively used to make it feel fresh every time you go into it. The time of day may change so that you get like a snow environment, or you get like a earlier time of day type of environment, where it's not snowing yet, or maybe you get a night environment. That's going to change things up a little bit. But for the most part, it's kind of like you do venture to some areas multiple times, and eventually you create like a sort of chain reaction of what you're doing, and yeah, that can feel repetitive. Luckily at the beginning, there's like this beach segment, and they kind of push the fact that, hey, you are in a loop, but don't worry, after a while that does calm down, and eventually you just kind of skip ahead to getting to the actual action. Now with that, like I had mentioned, it does feel very, very repetitive, and I wish there would have been more freedom in how you do stuff. You're basically discovering, and this is where I said it was linear, a thought out plan. You're just discovering it. I would have liked something more where, hey, this is a scenario where you get these objectives, you figure out what you need to do, and then you choose how you complete things. That's just kind of not how it's done here. You're basically being like, okay, this is the setup, this is how we're doing it. You're almost creating like a loop heist, if that makes sense. But I would have liked more of an idea of an open style or an open-ended kind of interpretation of how do you get this done. Kind of making it so it could be like, hey, if you do this and this and this, that could finish it, or you do this and this and this, and that could finish it. Whereas here it's very much something that feels preset in stone. And that's also where I say like the convoluted sort of linear, but it wants to be open world kind of thing. Like you can go out and you can explore these open world areas, but I also don't necessarily get the point of it, because most of the areas you already see while you're going to do the missions. Like they already take you to these areas. Now with that, I will say gameplay wise, this feels fantastic. The gunplay is great, the guns are creative, the guns are cool. There's different rarities to them, there's different trinkets that can improve them, all that kind of stuff. And of course, like I mentioned before, you can sacrifice that to get kind of points in order to keep things the next day and whatnot, and there's some upgrades. The guns feel really cool. like I just mentioned, and they seriously, they look really nice in how they feel, and it's kind of just like cuts things up really in a satisfying way. The melee combat's really neat. The death mechanic's kind of cool. You just saw that right there. I'll briefly talk about that now. When you die, you get a couple lives, basically, and you get kind of respawn back. You have to go back to your body to get your stuff. You only get a limited amount, though, per time you go to an area, so you gotta kind of be smart about things. And you gotta be clever. And you gotta move through the environment in a smart sort of way. And then, like, again, the melee is kind of, like, really powerful. You just, like, cut people apart, and that's super satisfying. Like, I think the gunplay is really, really good. And, you know, visually, the UI and everything like that, very nice, very well done. And it feels fantastic to go around shooting. And I love how you can approach the different areas. It feels kind of, you know, a little bit Dishonored, like, similar to other Bethesda games. It's like they basically took, you know, kind of the Wolfenstein type shooting, I want to say, and they threw it into this more kind of Dishonored type of freedom of how you tackle the scenarios. That part is really well done. Most areas you can go into multiple different ways. You can be creative, and depending on the perks you have, you might be able to double jump and teleport kind of over to an area that, you know, regularly you wouldn't be able to get to. So when you go back and visit areas multiple times, you can get to different places and different spots because you have better abilities to kind of get there. Or you might take a different path, or you might use stealth, or you might go in guns blazing. The choice is really up to you. That part is very wonderfully well done. Feels really good. And again, visually, you know, we just briefly talked about the options, but I think the game looks really nice. I love the sort of aesthetic. It feels truly Bethesda, but it also has this sort of really nice level of detail to it. I didn't really notice any sort of pop-in or anything else. Seems to run very smoothly in terms of the environment and how you move through it. It just seems to run quite well. Again, I did mention the performance drops and the different, you know, kind of modes have different issues to them, right? But in general, though, you know, the world seems to be very clean, very clear, cluttered with lots of stuff, which is nice, makes it feel very lively. There are lots of NPCs, these internalists running around. They are dumb as bricks, though. And the story kind of leans into that being like a thing of the game. Sort of being like, they keep commenting that, oh, these guys are so stupid, these like henchmen type. One just fell off the roof, that was funny. But you know, they're kind of like stupid basically, and but still, like when you're playing the game, they are very dumb. And they're also weirdly reactive, so it's like, but yet not reactive. So one thing I have a complaint about is like I'll be doing stealth and I'll be outside or something and I'll be running, or I'll be on a second floor, and all of these AI can hear me the floor below, which I think is super weird. So say I was at a loud party scene in this game, which there's a big club area, and I was, you know, running on the second floor, people were hearing me down below, and I was just like, what, how are they doing that? It's weird. And it's just like those small little polished bugs that kind of like really take away from things. Like I was mentioning, the lock screens, I had a crash, I had, you know, all these other little bugs for certain things, and it was kind of like, feels like it's not perfectly polished, which is a little disappointing. And in general, it's kind of okay. Like that's the biggest thing here. It's an all right game. It wasn't quite, you know, mind-blowing. It wasn't necessarily as deep as I was hoping for. It is kind of neat. I love the banter between the two leads. They're a lot of fun. I wish we would have, like, you can get to know the other characters because you can read their notes, but I wish we would have had more direct kind of confrontations and, you know, kind of usage of these secondary characters. You do get like light, quick banter, but you don't really get to know them, and it would have been cooler to spend more time with them. And I do wish the game was a bit longer too, because there's only a few different areas you actually go to. They're decently big, but they're like these just like medium type worlds that you kind of quickly run through to get stuff, and you can explore them like I mentioned, but you basically are forced to by doing the story stuff anyway, so I don't necessarily get the point of going off the beaten path too much, because you're not really going to discover anything too crazy. Occasionally you might find something here or there that lets you get to a new spot. That's cool, but you know what I mean? It really doesn't necessarily promote you wanting to go out into the world and do stuff after you realize, hey, it doesn't really benefit me to do that. So I kind of, like, I had fun playing this. It's a unique experience. The multiplayer thing, a little silly. I don't know how necessary it is. I do wish there was a little bit more feeling when you're getting shot at. because it's kind of like you don't. I don't know. I felt like I died really fast because I wasn't really feeling that I was getting shot, so that's weird. But also the banter plays through your controller, so that's kind of neat. At least you hear the voices of people talking to you through the controller, so that's very loud and in your face, which is kind of, you know, cool. I actually like that. It makes it feel a little bit more immersive in this particular situation. But yeah, I was just expecting something a little bit more unique or profound or, you know, distinct, and it's kind of just like an alright game. And there's times where I was kind of like in the environment trying to solve something. I was like, what does this game want out of me? And I would have to wander around in an area a little bit and kind of be like, oh, that's really simple, I should have done that, or what? Why does it want me to do this? And that was kind of weird too. But yeah, it's very okay. It's all right. It's got a number of issues that I was kind of like, oh, you know, kind of drag things down. It's got a cool, sort of clunky, neat visual kind of hit style to it. I really like the aesthetics. I like, you know, how the game feels. I like how it plays. I was intrigued by the story. There are some surprises and twists here or there. You know, they keep you guessing to some degree. But it was just kind of like, I was never really 100% encaptured by the weirdness and what was happening. I was kind of always just like, huh, okay. Because they explained, they just, like, again, at the beginning, they just pile information on your screen. You're, like, clicking through a whole bunch of little tab things trying to explain everything to you right away. And I was just like, oh, geez. It's like, there's a lot going on here. But, yeah, I was never really totally invested in what was going on, you know, between the characters and that. And I think maybe they could have done more strict storytelling in this one. Because either they needed to add a lot more areas for you to visit or more things for you to do to get more invested, or they needed to make more of a focus on, you know, storytelling aspects, because I was just kind of sitting there going, huh, it's interesting, you know, it's got some funny stuff, it's got some weird characters, but it's just like, you know, I'm not fully encaptured by what it is. I do like the concepts here, because it's kind of messed up and funny in a way, but at the same time, I think they could have, you know, push things a lot further, especially for a next-gen title. It doesn't necessarily have that sort of next-gen feeling to it. It's kind of impressive, but not really too impressive. I don't know, is it even that impressive? Is something I would just keep thinking to myself. I'm like, it just seems like a pretty standard sort of, you know, explore and fight kind of thing. Oh, and if you're worried about codes or anything being spoilerish, codes are different for everyone. So if you were trying to get like a quick guide for opening something, you know, they're randomized and whatnot. Same with other things in the environment. That's why I was saying, like, some stuff is like spoilerish, but it really isn't, because it's not. And yeah, it's pretty crazy to deal with. So I think, you know, generally overall, I liked playing the game, but I wasn't blown away by it, and I kind of, like, value-wise, I kind of thinking, I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know about this one. You know, it's got a number of bugs, it's got a number of issues. You know, it was a little frustrating having to replay segments. It doesn't take long to get to places, but it was just kind of like, you know, you do all this fighting and battling in some areas, and you're just like, well, now I gotta restart the whole thing, and it's like the game is obviously still playing, but you know, like these menu pop-ups, and it's just like you can't close them, and you're just stuck between this glitched hybrid gameplay and menu thing that's not supposed to happen. And I know that's not supposed to happen because I played so many segments of it where the menus work properly and whatnot, and it's just, that's a bit odd. You know, there's not really any loading, which is good. Like, it basically instant, you just get into the next segment, that's nice. But, you know, you do get the odd loading screen. It's just, they're pretty brief. I don't know, there's something about it that doesn't fully feel like a next-gen experience to me, and to that degree it was disappointing. The concept, really cool, but not fully executed in a way that really made me excited about playing this game. And I think it is kind of one of those one and done kind of things. Like, you can finish it, and then you can go and, like, basically bother people online if you want, and again, you can turn that option off, but you know, other than that, it's kind of like it's one and done, and then you move on. And I don't think that's a bad thing for games, but for this one, I definitely felt like there needed to be more to it, more long-term systems or something. Like, I like the systems of you kind of getting all this gear and working through it and being smart about how you use it each day. But then, you know, once you get to the end and if you've done everything, you're kind of like, okay, that's Deathloop, and that's basically how I feel. So it needed a bit more polish. It didn't necessarily blow me away. It's a very alright game. It's okay, it's fine, gets the job done. decent story, decent, like, good banter between the characters, unique premise, but not fully reaching its potential, and to me that was a little bit disappointing, for sure.